Peace and blessings to the 12 tribes of Israel. Today I'm going to deal with a Bible share called Arsareth Revealed, or Revelations of Arsareth, or Arsareth Revealed. Arsareth Revealed. So this is a Bible share talking about Arsareth, because what a lot of these Israelite groups do is that they tell you that Arsareth is the Americas. So they say it's North America, Central America and South America. So it's the Western Hemisphere, right? Now, Arsareth, some of them will boldly say it's North America, meaning it's United States of America. Right? Some of them would say, most of them would say it's the Western Hemisphere, meaning South America, Central America, and North America, or mainly North America and South America, the Americas, right? So I'm just going to do a Bible share whereby I go through a few scriptures, and hopefully you'll see it a bit clearer that Arsareth is not really what we've been told all these years ago, right? So let's go. So Arsareth being the Americas, North, South and Central America. This is a lie. The 12 tribe chart is a deception. It has no Israelites, and it has no Israelites whatsoever from Africa, from the continent of Africa, even though Israel spent 430 years in Egypt and was told to flee into the interiors or further into Africa in 70 AD, right? So let's first go to the scripture of which confuses, or which is giving the deception or confuses people. So I'm just going to give you what I found out, and hopefully you will gain edification from it. So it's 2nd Ezra 13, and we're going to read from 40 to 49. Here, ready, go. Those are the 10 tribes which are carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king. Right, so this talking about Hosea the king, whom Salmonah, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. But they took his counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into further country which never mankind dwelt. So after the captivity ended, they decided to leave and to go to settle somewhere else. So after a few, I think it was a few hundred years of captivity, they decided to leave. Right? A few years, they decided to leave. So they took this counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land, and they entered into the Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. So basically they were walking past Assyria, I believe it was, I think it was bits of Syria and bits of Turkey, I think, right? But anyhow, they were coming from that region, and they were coming past the river Euphrates, and they were coming towards the interiors of Africa. So they were walking all the way past the land of Israel, all the way past Jerusalem, all the way through further into Africa, because Israel was very much a part of Africa, right? Because it was all attached before it was split, right? So it says that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land, and they entered in the Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. Now, the problem about this is that the Israelites, they had this whole fantasy of they left Assyria and they left the river and they went all the way around the world, all the way around Africa, all the way down to Central Africa, East Africa, all the way around South Africa, and all the way up to South America and to North America. Now, this is not true. All the way up South America, Caribbean and the North America. Now, this is not true, because the Bible doesn't say that, right? The Bible literally says that they were passed over. Let's just read it again. Let's read that verse again. So it says that they might there keep their statutes which they never kept in their own land, and they entered into Arsareth, which is the river, by the narrow passages of the river. So they crossed over. So they looked for a part that was narrow, and they crossed over. And they entered into the Arsareth by the narrow passages of the river. So they didn't do the round the world trip, around all the way around Africa and all the way up through South America and North America and the Caribbean. They didn't do that. It literally says that they passed over to the other side. So let's read again. For the Most High then showed signs of them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. So they literally were crossing a river. So they literally was crossing a river. They didn't do a round the world trip. They were crossing a river. So let's hold that scripture. And let's go to a few other scriptures to prove that. So it says they looked for the narrow passages of the river and then they crossed over. That's literally what it said, right? It never said anything about round the world trip. So let's go to Joshua. Let's go to Joshua 3 and we're going to read from 14 to 17. Joshua 3, I'll be reading from 14 to 17. Here, ready, go. And it shall come to pass, as soon as the soles of the feet of the priests that bear ark of the Lord of all the earth, shall rest in the waters of Jordan, that the waters of Jordan shall be cut off from the waters that come down from above, and they shall stand upon a heap. And it came to pass when the people removed their tents to pass over Jordan, and the priests bearing the ark of the covenant before the people, and as they that bear the ark were come unto Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bear the ark were dipped in the brim of the water, for Jordan flowed all his banks all the time of the harvest. Right, so they're saying that the river was notorious for overflowing its banks, that the waters which came down from above stood and rose up upon a heap very far from the city. This is literally telling you about a miracle, something really extreme. So it says 16, the waters which came down from above stood and rose up upon a heap very far from the city. So the waters just rose up and they just kind of stayed there. It didn't flow. Adam rose up upon a heap very far from the city. Adam, that is beside Zaratan, and those that came down towards the sea of the plain, even the salt sea failed and were cut off. And the people passed over right against Jericho. Right? Because the water wasn't flowing. It was held up. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan. And dry ground in the midst of Jordan the river. There was no water there. It was dry ground. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. So literally, it's telling you, this is clear as day. I mean, you don't even have to read it like 10 times to work out what it's saying. The Lord is literally saying that the river Jordan, he kept the waters back in a heap. He stopped the flow of the water. So when Israel was passing over, they were passing over in dry land. That was a miracle. That's what the Lord did. That was a sign from heaven. Right? So let's read another one. So the whole idea of Israel crossing a river, which has been parted by the Most High, for Israel to cross on dry land, or the narrow passages of a river, where the river is being held back, or the waters or the seas has been held back in a heap so that Israel can cross the river. This is nothing unusual. There's repeated examples in the Bible. So let's go to Isaiah 11 and we're going to read from 15 to 16. And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea, and his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, and make men go over dry shod. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, like as it as it was to Israel in the day that he came up out of the land of Egypt. So let's go over it. And the Lord shall utterly destroy the tongue of the Egyptian sea. So that goes into the Red Sea. And with his mighty wind shall he shake his hand over the river, which the river could be the river Nile or whatever river it is, and shall smite it, could be the Euphrates, and smite it in 7 streams, and make men go over dry shod. It just means dry land. It means he's going to hold back the water in a heap, and then where Israel can walk through on dry shod or dry land. And there shall be a highway for the remnant of his people. So the highway goes into the 1/3 of Israel, the elect, which shall be left from Assyria. So he's now talking about the brothers and sisters that were left in Assyria, which is the modern day Turkey, like as it was to Israel in the day that he came out of the land of Egypt. Just like the same way that the Lord took us out of Egypt and took us through the wilderness, parted the Red Sea, etc., etc., etc. All right. So what the Lord is saying, the highway that he's talking about is salvation. That's all he's talking about. He's talking about the salvation of Israel when Christ returns. So when Israel is taken from Assyria and is taken up into the chariots, into the clouds, and taken into salvation. That's what the Lord is talking about when he goes, there's another highway that is coming, right? That shall happen. So this is not unusual. So when you go back to Euphrates, so let's quickly go back. So let's go back to Euphrates. So let's go back to 2nd Ezra 13, and we're reading Euphrates. So we're going to read 43 again. So we're going to read, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow passages of the river. So the passage of which Israel crossed was narrow. For the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. So he did it again. So he did it with the Euphrates. He held the water in a heap and he stopped the water from flowing. For through the country there was a great way to go. So through this area there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half. It took them a year and a half to get to Arsareth. And the same region is called Arsareth. Then dwelt they there until the latter time, and now when they shall begin to come. Right, so some of them are still there. The highest shall stay the springs of the stream again, that they may go through. Therefore sawest thou the multitude with peace. But those that be left behind thy people are they that are found within my borders. So now we get an idea of the direction of which they were coming from the river Euphrates. So they were going past the land allotted to Israel, past Jerusalem, and they were going in the motion to further into Africa, to West Africa, basically, right? So it says, but those that be left behind of thy people are they that are found within my borders. 49. Now, when he destroy the multitude of the nations that are gathered together, he shall defend his people that remained. Right. So that goes into when Christ returns. Right. So it says in 48, for those that are left behind of thy people are they that are found within my borders. So let's now go to 2nd Ezra 9 to precept it, because it says my borders. So we're going to go to 2nd Ezra 9. Just to get to the point, let's read from 7 to 8. And everyone that shall be saved and shall be able to escape by his works and by faith, whereby ye have believed, shall be preserved from the said perils and shall see my salvation in my land. Right, so my land, meaning the land was given to Israel, and within my borders. So that goes into the land that was given to Israel, Jerusalem. For I have sanctified them for me from the beginning. Right, so this goes into the remnant of Israel that will be saved, that shall be saved. So when we go back to 48, it says, but those that are left behind, so some of them were left behind in Jerusalem. But those that are left behind, thy people, so that's the land that was given to Israel, including Jerusalem. So those that are left behind, so some people stayed behind, are they that are found within my borders, right? So my borders meaning the land that was given to Israel. So now we get an idea, the pathway. Now when he destroyed the multitude of the nations that are gathered together, he shall defend his people that remain. Right, so that goes into future prophecy. So let's close that, and let's now go to so let's now deal with, now Arsareth means Algeria, right? So it's modern day Algeria. So if you look on this old map, which is on the screen, you would see the motion of which they were going. So they were going past here, past Jerusalem, and going straight into going further into West Africa. So this part here is Arsareth in the Bible. So this is a really old map. So this tells you where Arsareth was. Right, so now there's no excuse now to say it was the Americas, because we've now seen the map now where it was. So it's literally modern day Algeria. So they were going to West Africa, and it took them 1.5 years to get there. Right, so that's been cleared up. So let's now go to Zephaniah. Let's rattle off a few scriptures before I close. So we read in Zephaniah 3, and we're going to read from 8 to 13. Therefore, wait ye upon me, said the Lord, until the day that I rise up to the prey. For my determination is to gather the nations, that I may assemble the kingdoms, to pour upon them mine indignation, even all my fierce anger. For all the earth shall be devoured in the fire of my jealousy. So this is a future prophecy of when Christ returns. Right? That's going into World War III and when Christ returns. For then will I turn to the people a pure language, that they may all call upon my name of the Lord, to serve him with one consent. So that's going to go into a pure Hebrew, and also the Lord would tell us exactly what he wants done. Right? From beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my supplants, even a daughter of my dispersed shall bring mine offering. So when it says beyond the rivers of Ethiopia, it goes into the river of the Nile, the river Nile. Right, so it's the river that runs all the way down, the White Nile, Blue Nile. It goes into different places. So it's the river Nile. So it says, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my supplants. So Ethiopia was called Cush, right? And there was more land to Ethiopia than what it is now, right? So it says, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my supplants, even the daughter of my dispersed shall bring mine offering. And in that day shalt thou not be ashamed for all thy doings, wherein thou hast transgressed against me. But then I will take away out of the midst of thee them that rejoice in thy pride, and thou shalt no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. Now, what I should say, when it says, and in that day shalt thou not be ashamed for all thy doings, wherein thou hast transgressed against me, for then I will take... All right, so we're going to 10. So it says, from beyond the rivers of Ethiopia my supplants, even a daughter of my dispersed shall bring mine offering. So when it says daughter, it means the Israelites that were protected. So that's really what he's getting at. So it means the so-called Africans that are really Israelites, the Bantu people in Africa are the Israelites. So he's talking about the ones that were not taken on the slave ships, the ones that were left there in the continent of Africa. So he calls them the daughters of my supplants. So let's read from 11 again. In that day shalt thou not be ashamed for all thy doings, wherein thou hast transgressed against me. For then I will take away out of the midst of thee them that rejoice in thy pride, and thou shalt no more be haughty because of my holy mountain. So you're no longer going to be arrogant. Because you're Israel, you could do whatever the hell you want to do. You're no longer going to be arrogant anymore. I will also leave in the midst of thee an afflicted and poor people. So the people over there in Africa are under a curse, right? The Israelites, I should say, over there in Africa. Because Hamite and Israelites are different, right? So Hamite and Shemite blacks are different. Israelite blacks are Shemite, and Hamite blacks are all the other tribes, the real Africans that were there from the beginning. So it's, I will also leave in the midst of thee an afflicted and poor people, they shall trust in the name of the Lord. So that's poor people, poor Israelites, and afflicted Israelites, right? Always oppressed. The remnant of Israel shall not do iniquity, nor speak lies. Neither shall a deceitful tongue be found in their mouth, for they shall feed and lie down, and none shall make them afraid. So this goes into the kingdom. When the Christ returns and the kingdom has been established, Christ's kingdom has been established, right? So that's why the Israelites in Africa tend to be poor, right? That's why things don't work over there as much as it works for the other nations, right? The leading nation is the Edomites, right? Everything, well, a lot of things work for them, right? Because they've been given the balance of leadership, of rulership over this earth, right? Also, the Ammonites and the Moabites, they have the children of Lot. They also have been given the balance of power over this earth as well, but not like the Edomites, right? So let's now quickly go to rattle off a few scriptures so that we can close, right? So we're going to go to Ezekiel 6. Let's quickly go to Ezekiel 6 and we're going to read from 8 to 10. Ezekiel 6 and we're reading from 8 to 10. Yet will I leave a remnant that ye may have some that shall escape the sword among the nations when you shall be scattered through the nations. So we're reading from 8 to 10. So I'm going to read all of it and then we'll come back again to the first few verses. And they that escape of you shall remember me among the nations whither they shall be carried captives, because I am broken with their whorish heart, which heart departed from me, and with their eyes which go whoring after idols, and they shall loathe themselves for the evils which they have committed in all of their abominations. So that's when Israel started to worship other gods. And they shall know that I am the Lord, and that I have not said in vain that I would do this evil unto them. So the curses were spoken by Moses, and they had to come to pass because Israel was disobedient, right? Right, so let's go back up to 8. So yet will I leave a remnant that ye may have some that shall escape the sword. So this remnant, it says that some that shall escape the sword among the nations when ye shall be scattered through the countries. Right, so it's talking about the ones there in Africa that were. So where it says those that escaped the sword, is talking about those that were left there in Africa, right? That missed the slave ships. That's what he's getting at. So he's saying those that escape the sword, right? Now, the sword, in a sense that they were not put on the slave ships, but in one way or another, they went through the curses, right? Colonialism, etc., right? So it says, yet I will leave a remnant that ye may have some that shall escape the sword among the nations. Right, so when they're scattered among the nations, when ye shall be scattered through the countries. And 9, and they that escaped of you shall remember me among the nations whither they shall be carried captives, because I am broken with their whorish heart. So it says, and they that escaped of you shall remember me among the nations whither they shall be carried captives. Right, so this is going into those that were left behind and those that were taken out. So he says, whither they shall be carried captives, because I am broken with their whorish heart, which heart departed from me, and with their eyes which go whoring after their idols, and they shall loathe themselves for the evils which they have committed in all of their abominations. So when we were going through the transatlantic slavery stacked on slave ships and being beaten and raped and demeaned, dehumanized, that is what the Lord is talking about. Those that were taken away and those that were left behind. So colonialism and slavery, right? So let's now go to Isaiah 11, and we're going to read from 11 to 13. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again a second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Pathros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. Right? So he's telling you where the Israelites are today, right? So he's saying from Assyria, right, which would have been, I think it's modern day Turkey. And from Egypt, which goes into, so modern day, that goes into Africa. And then Pathros, it goes into Upper Egypt. Cush goes into Ethiopia. Elam goes into Iran, in the Indian subcontinent. Shinar goes into Iraq. Hamath goes into Syria. And from the islands of the sea goes into the Caribbean, right? So it goes into the Caribbean, the islands there in the Caribbean Sea, right? So these are the places of which Israel will be gathered from. So let's read 12. And he shall set up an enzyme for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. So Judah was scattered to the four corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. So this insinuates that Ephraim was mainly in Africa. That's what it insinuates. Ephraim was mainly in Africa. Mainly stayed in Africa. Because if you read it, it says, if you read 12 again, and he shall set up an enzyme for the nations and shall assembly the outcasts of Israel. Right? That's talking about the northern kingdom. And gather together the disperse of Judah. Right? Those that went into slavery on the slave ship from the four corners of the earth, scattered to the four corners of the earth. The envy also of Ephraim shall depart, and the adversaries of Judah shall be cut off. Ephraim shall not envy Judah, and Judah shall not vex Ephraim. So it insinuates that Ephraim would have been the daughter of my supplant. Right? So it insinuates largely, because you can't, the problem about the Bible is that you can't say everyone was Judah, or everyone was Benjamin, or everyone was Ephraim, because there would always be other tribes there. Right? But what you can say is it insinuates that Ephraim would have been largely in Africa. Right? So, and of course, it name checks Africa because it talks about Pathros, meaning Upper Egypt. Egypt itself means Africa. Right? And Cush being Ethiopia. So he's literally telling you that the vast majority of his Israelites, or a huge chunk of them, are in Africa. Right? So, let's go faster. Let's go to Ezekiel 29, and we're going to read from 23 to 29. And the heathen shall know that the house of Israel went into captivity for their iniquity, because they trespassed against me. Therefore hid I my face from them, and gave them into the hands of thine enemies. So fell they all by the sword. Right. So in that respect, they fell by the sword. Right. So that's talking about the house of Israel. According to their uncleanness and according to their transgressions have I done unto them, and hid my face from them. Therefore thus said the Lord God, now will I bring again the captivity of Jacob. The captivity of Jacob, and have mercy upon the whole house of Israel, and will be jealous for my holy name. Right, so he names check the whole house of Israel being the captivity of Jacob, meaning all 12 tribes. After that have borne their shame and all their trespasses, whereby they have trespassed against me, when they dwelt safely in their land, and none made them afraid. When I have brought them again from the people, and gathered them out of the enemy's land, and am sanctified in them in the sight of many nations, then shall they know that I am the Lord their God, which caused them to be led into captivity among the heathen. But I have gathered them unto their own land, and I have left none of them any more there. Neither will I hide my face any more from them, for I have poured out my spirit upon the house of Israel, saith the Lord. So he's talking about all the tribes, right? So what he's saying there is that he's going to bring back all the tribes from wherever they were scattered. Wherever they are, he's going to bring them back. Right, so let's go to Zechariah 1. So reading Zechariah 1, reading from 18 to 21. Here, ready, go. Then I lifted up mine eyes and saw, behold, 4 horns, and I saw an angel that talked with me. What be these? And he answered me, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, Israel, and Jerusalem. So that goes into all of the tribes. And the Lord showed me 4 carpenters. Then said I, what come these to do? Why these here? And he spoke, saying, these are the horns which have scattered Judah, so that no man did lift up his head. But these are come to fray them, to cast out the horns of the Gentiles, which lifted up their horn over the land of Judah to scatter it. So this goes into it. What it's saying is that Judah got the harshest judgment, because Judah was scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. Right? Being a head tribe, I suppose you can understand. Right? Because if you have a head tribe, which is Judah, and the whole of Israel went into captivity, then you can only assume that he would be harsh, very harsh towards the head tribe. So this is actually saying it's name checking Judah. Right? So let's go to Jeremiah 3. So we're reading Jeremiah 3, and we're reading from 17 to 18. And the time that they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem, neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. 18. In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel. They shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto your fathers. Now, I believe that when it says the land of the north, it's talking about North America. That's what I believe. But it could be North America amongst other northern of the northern hemisphere, right? It doesn't necessarily mean it's North America, but it could mean a northern hemisphere too, right? So let's read. So let's read 17. At that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem. Neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. So the nations it's talking about is the Israelites that were scattered into all nations and became those nations. They adopted their customs and looks to a certain extent. 18. In those days the house of Judah shall walk with the house of Israel. They shall come together out of the land of the north, which I believe is North America, but it could be the northern hemisphere, right? Because we know that all the tribes were scattered, and we know the worst went to Judah. So it says, and they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto your fathers. So basically that's when we go back. That's when Israel goes back to the land that we were given, right? To all of the land that we were given. So let's now go to Joel 3. So we read in Joel 3 and we're going to read from 1 to 8. So we want to pay attention to verse number 6. So it says, for behold, in those days, in the time when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. Now, Judah there is the tribe of Judah, and Jerusalem just means Benjamin. Right, it just means Benjamin and all the other tribes that were there in Jerusalem, right? But primarily Benjamin, right? We know the Levites too were there because they were the priests, right? They didn't have a land. So let's read. For behold, in those days, in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem, it just means the house of Judah. I will also gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine, and they might drink. Yea, what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of Palestine? Will you render me a recompense? And if you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head? Because you have taken my silver and my gold, and have carried it into your temples my goodly pleasant things. So that goes into when they raided the temple a few times. The children also of Judah and Jerusalem of Judah and the children of Jerusalem have ye sold unto the Cretians, that ye might remove them far from their border. Behold, I will raise them out of the place whither you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head, and I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hands of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabeans, to a people far off, for the Lord has spoken it. Now, what we establish from all of these scriptures is that Israel was scattered all over the world. We were scattered even into the interiors of Africa, and also being put under slave ships and scattered to the four corners of the earth. But we know from reading these scriptures that Judah, the tribe of Judah, or the house of Judah, went through the worst. So just to be clear, where it says Judah and Jerusalem, it just means Judah and Benjamin. And obviously Levi too, because Levi were the priests. So the priests would have been hanging out in the temple, right? And Levi had no land, right? So they make up the house of Judah, which are the Jews, right? So where it talks about Judah, it's talking about the tribe of Judah. And where it talks about Jerusalem, it's just adding on the other two tribes, right? So they make up the Jews. So basically, those Negroes, black people that went into the transatlantic slavery, and they were moved from the Eastern Hemisphere, i.e. Africa, etc., and were taken in the slave ships across to the Western Hemisphere, were the Jews, right? That's what the Bible is saying. Repeatedly, the Lord is saying the same thing over and over again. They were the Jews. That's Judah and Benjamin and Levi. So the 10 tribes would have been primarily stayed in Africa because when in Second Ezra 13, it's talking about the 10 tribes, because only the 10 tribes were taken into captivity in Assyria. So when that captivity was over, right, then they made, a lot of them took the route from Assyria all the way into West Africa, which have been Arsareth, which is Algeria, right? So just to be clear, so the 10 tribes would have either, some of them stayed in Algeria, of course, in Arsareth, but a lot of them traveled further down Africa, right? So they would have traveled down further down to the south of Africa and the east of Africa, right? Now, the Jews later on were chucked. The Jews were those Israelites that were chucked out of Jerusalem, etc. Right, so that would have been the Jews, and they also flee into Africa, and they would have went more so West Africa or other parts of Africa too. So that's how they ended up in the transatlantic slavery. Now, I'm not going to bang a drum longer than I need to bang a drum. Brothers and sisters, I hope you were edified. Shalom.